Hello everyone, it's Marc Sabatella. Welcome to the MuseScore Café. So this is my regular series I do on Wednesdays where we talk about some aspect of making music using MuseScore. And this being the first Wednesday of the month, we're up for the Ask Me Anything session, which I do on the first Wednesdays, obviously. And so I will be inviting your questions about really anything, mostly MuseScore related, but if it ventures into other aspects of music making, we can talk about that too. I'm ready for your questions, and as always, I've got some things I can talk about if there's a lull in the question asking procedures here. So by all means, start hitting me up with your questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. So let me, while I wait for a question to come in here, let me just tell you one of the things I've been working on. So first of all, we are looking right now at a current build of what I think is going to become MuseScore 4.0.2 within the next day or two or three, I don't know. So there is now, they have fixed all the bugs they plan to fix. If any new ones get reported, based on this, but there's a handful of people that are testing this 4.02 build, and if any new crashes or anything get discovered, that might hold things up. Otherwise, I would expect to see this in the next couple of days. So, Catherine, I see you have a question about harp patterns, and you mentioned this earlier, but I don't know what your question is. So I'm going to just start talking about harp pedal in general, and then if you have a specific question that you want to ask, go ahead. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create a new score for harp, and I'm going to show you, there is a plugin that supposedly can help automate with harp pedals. It may or may not work with MuseScore 4. Some people have reported success. When I tried it a bit ago, it wasn't working, but it's okay. I want to show you how you can add harp pedal diagrams without needing that. So I'm going to go ahead and add a harp to my score, and let's talk about adding a harp pedal diagram. So the first question is going to be, how are we going to add this diagram? In other words, what kind of element? There's not a specific harp pedal diagram element. It's going to have to be either like a staff text or something like that. So I'm going to recommend we do use staff text for it, and I believe that diagrams will normally go below the bottom staff. I'm believing this to be correct. So if I type Control T here and type some text, you can see it appears above the staff. So I'm going to press X to get that below the staff. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Now let's go in here and edit the text, and I want to show you how you can create your own harp pedal diagrams easily. Marla, I know you must have some experience with this also, and maybe you can be assisting. But let me tell you how you can do it directly. So I'm going to delete the text that's there, and now I'm going to open the Special Characters palette. So I'm currently editing text, right? I've got a cursor here. I'm going to press Shift and F2. And that will open the Special Characters palette. Now I'll come to where it says Musical Symbols, and then I'm going to scroll down here to where it says Harp Techniques. And here are the symbols that you're going to need. So is it 4 and then the divider and then 3? Let's say you want to go up, up, neutral, down, and then the divider, and then neutral, neutral, up. There you go. So that's a harp pedal diagram. So that is a good starting one. Now I don't know if I actually formatted that correctly. I sort of think that's how I remember them looking. I would want to look it up. So then the next thing is, well, if you're doing harp a lot and you don't want to have to open this Special Characters palette all the time, then the next thing is, well, let's talk about how to customize your palette to make this easier. So I'm going to go ahead and I've created a custom workspace. I'm not going to do this in my default workspace, but I've created a separate one called Demonstration that's set up, specifically so I can mess around with it and not mess things up. So now I'm in my Demonstration workspace, and I'm going to say Add Palettes, Create Custom Palette, and call it Harp. So now I have a harp palette. And now I can go back to that Special Characters dialog. Is it still open? It might be, but let me just get back to it. Shift F2. go back to musical symbols, go back to harp techniques, and now just drag these guys in here. 1, 2, oops, didn't get far enough. So it is a little finicky to actually get the symbol to drag in sometimes, and I don't know why that is. So sometimes it takes a little fiddling around, like you saw it go in for a second, right? Okay, it's got to be towards the bottom, it looks like. Towards the bottom of the palette. There we go. And then towards the bottom of the palette here. It depends on the specific symbol you're adding. So now I've got myself a harp palette, and I don't have to open that thing anymore. So now, if I want, I can Control T and just click my symbols here. 3, 4, divider, 1, 2, 3. I have no idea if that 4 then divider 3 is actually the thing or not. But now you might look at this and say, well, gee, that's kind of small. So what we also might want to do is go to Properties and make this thing bigger. And now it's bigger. So, and then you can add that entire diagram. In fact, you could add a whole bunch of preset diagrams if you wanted to your palette, but maybe I'll just add one that's already customized. Oops, I dragged. I need to do Control Shift drag. There we go. Now I can easily add a diagram. And actually, let me delete that one. Let me take this guy, reset it, press X to flip it below. I'm going to delete that existing one from the palette. And now I'm going to Control Shift drag this custom one in. I got to get this thing selected. Control Shift drag. There it is. And now I can easily just add a diagram, and it's already the right size. And then I can edit the text to set it up however I want. So anyhow, now playback, you still got to put in the notes, right? The diagram is just for show, right? That's just to tell a harpist how to set the pedals. If you want a G sharp, you still have to enter a G sharp into the score. Pedal never, I mean, that's not a MuseScore thing, that's just a music thing. Adding, showing a G sharp in your pedal diagram does not magically change G's into G sharps. You still need to notate it as G sharp. So, I'm going to, let this sit for a second and see if other questions do come in about harp pedal diagrams. But meanwhile, I'll talk about some of the other questions I see coming in. And, I really don't know what happens if you're sitting there waiting for the stream to start and, I don't know how that process works. I know when I hit the go live button, immediately I see the counter of the number of participants starting to go up. So at least for some people, they're in like instantly within seconds. But I really don't know how that process works. But this time I started it maybe 30 seconds after the half hour. So I started it pretty on time. All right, so the question was for Graham about changing note head colors for a selected voice. And that's a very good question. So I'm going to enter some notes here. C, D, E, F, G. You hear anything? I didn't hear anything. What happened to my playback? Hello? Oh, it's just quiet because I turned it down. Ha, 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 ha. So, and it's harp, and so it's quieter than I expect. So let's now shift to voice 2. So I'll click my voice 2 button. Whoops. Don't click voice 2 button while you're not in note input mode, or it changes the note that you have selected. I go into note input mode, then press voice 2, and now I'll enter some notes. E, F, G, A. All right. So now I have some notes selected, and since we're talking about, so Catherine, I actually answered this question when you asked it in the course. I don't know if you missed my answer, but I did tag you, so you should have seen the answer, but I'll just go ahead and do it since I'm entering multiple voices right now. Let's say that instead of this A, I wanted it to be an F. Well, I'll just change it to an F, and there you go. 2 voices is how you have stems up and down. So F in voice 1 has the stem up, and then I also have an F. So if I enter my G and then my F, and then I hit Control up to move it up an octave, you get that note. So the way to have a note with two stems is to enter the same note into both voices. All right, so now let's get to Graham's question about coloring these things. I'm going to select that whole measure here, or it could be as big a passage as you want, and now I'm going to go to View Selection Filter. And this gives you a panel here where you can control what is actually selected. What was the question specifically? Let's say it's voice 2 I want to color. If I want to color the notes in voice 2, I need to unselect voice 1. I need to remove voice 1 from my selection. So now only voice 2 is selected. Now it does seem there's sort of a weird glitch in MuseScore 4 where it doesn't automatically update the selection as soon as you do that. You kind of have to click off of it and reselect it. And now you can tell only voice 2 is selected, right? You can tell that because we see the green, but the voice 1 notes are not selected. They're still black. Now that that's the case, I can come over to Properties, Appearance, Color, and make them purple. They still look green because they're selected, but as soon as I click off of it, you can see that they are in fact purple. So I use the selection filter for that. There's another way to do it. Let me undo that. Whoa! Okay. Little crash on undo of color change. That's an interesting thing. And coloring notes for guitar based on string. That's an interesting idea. So this time, I'm going to go ahead and create my score for guitar plus tablature, and we're going to find out. So this time I'm going to enter some notes and go to voice 2 with Control Alt 2, enter some more notes. And this time what I'm going to do, instead of using the selection filter, is I'm going to right click a note and say Select Similar. Hello. I did say select similar, right? Right click, select similar. The select similar dialog is not appearing where I expect it to appear. So what is happening is the good question. Select more. That's because I had nothing right clicked. I gotta normally I said select similar. I didn't mean that. I meant select more. Silly me. Select more gives you the dialog. Now you can say same voice. Okay. And now you can see that voice 2 notes are selected, and I can go to Properties, Appearance, and change the color again. This time we'll make them yellow. And I got some yellow notes. And again, color does not seem to make MuseScore happy right now, but I'm not going to worry about that. That procedure is similar in older versions. Yeah, it's basically the same. It's, instead of Properties, it's Inspector, but it's basically the same process. Inspector is how you change color. Selection filter or right click is how you select by voice. So that remains true in all versions. Since MuseScore 2 at least, it's been the same process. So now let's see if we can in fact select by string. Let me enter I'll enter some more notes. Now come down to another string. And now come down and enter some more notes. Whoops. All right, I got some notes selected. Entered. Let's see if I can say right click on one of these, select, more, same string. There we go. Same string, okay. And sure enough, it has selected just the notes on that same string. So the answer to your question is yes, same string absolutely works. So, I'm hoping that those of you who are talking about the process of getting in here can help each other out, because of course it's different for me. I'm starting the thing. But I will say what I have noticed in the past when I've tried testing this is if you click the thing that says like join stream or whatever, it'll say waiting for stream to start or something like that. And as soon as the stream starts, it should just automatically update. That's what I find. But you have to have clicked where it says join. If you don't click where it says join, it's not going to like automatically do it. So that's the thing. So click the join as soon as you get there. Anytime within a half hour, you can start joining within a half hour of when it starts. So I say it starts at 12:30 Eastern. Anytime between 12 and 12:30, you will find the join button, and then when you click it, it'll just say waiting or waiting for host. I don't remember what the message is exactly, but it'll say something to let you know that it's waiting. All right. So there's a question here also that I saw about voicings, which let's see. Rootless spread voicing, and okay, that's actually two different terms. So let me see. First of all, did I miss? Oh, here's Nashville number system. Okay. So the thing is, I don't know the Nashville number system. So I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about Larry's question here. But I'm going to try this. To be honest, I mean, okay, I say I don't know it, but I implemented the support for it because I was implementing Roman numeral analysis support, and I knew while I was at it, I could probably get Nashville numbering to work really easily. So I just wrote a few lines of code to do it. But I just consulted with a couple people, and I didn't overthink it. So if there's an issue, then you might have to open an issue to report the bug, and then someone else could do it. But let me see. Alternate base notes. So in the key of C, you want 27/#4. Okay, so if I do that, if I go to, let me zoom in a little bit more. If I go to add text Nashville number, and I type 27/#4. So it does display as I kind of expect, but the playback, it's not playing anything back. Does it normally play back Nashville numbers? I can't remember that. Do Nashville numbers normally play is the question, because I just entered one, and it says it's supposed to play. Maybe it's because it can't understand it, that it's not playing it. Let me just try a simple one. Let's try going add text Nashville number and just type 1. So it looks like the Nashville number. Oh, did I turn off chord symbols? Maybe that's what I did. Let's show you how to do that. In the gear icon here, play chord symbols. There we go. That's the magic button there. So now let's try it again. Yeah, so you're right. It added a #4. So it's a playback bug with Nashville numbers, and I can totally see how that happened because the playback of chord symbols was implemented independently of Nashville numbers. In other words, one person was working on playback of chord symbols. Independently of that, I was working on Nashville numbers, and our code sort of never got kind of like merged together in a way that makes sense. So the Nashville number playback is probably not up to snuff. So I would go ahead and what I would normally recommend is you go to GitHub. So if you go within the community, you'll see the links to where you can submit an issue on GitHub. Open an issue on GitHub and describe exactly that. If you need help doing that, just make a post and I'll try to help set up the issue. But I'd really like people to be able to submit their own issues ultimately once we have a good process in place. They just this morning announced a new process. So yeah, maybe don't submit it yet. Let's talk about that later. All right. So Larry has a question about rootless spread voicings. And so I don't have my whole keyboard thing set up here because normally I talk about music on the Music Masterclass, but usually the term spread voicing actually implies having the root in it. It implies having the root on the bottom, and it's like for trombones, for instance. Root on the bottom, and then a third, and then a seventh, and then a color tone on top. 4 notes like that. Root, third, seventh, color tone, or root, seventh, third, color tone. Those are typical spread voicings. So if we omit the root from that, then we have just the third, the seventh, and the color tone. So let's answer your question with that in mind. Since this dominant seventh is where the action is, use flat 9, sharp 9, flat 13 on the dominant seventh. Yes. So when I say add the color tone, by all means, make that color tone, instead of being a regular ninth, like 3, 7, 9, make it be 3, 7, flat 9. Or if it's 7, 3, 6, make it 7, 3, flat 6, or flat 13. In the lesson that I just did for the musicianship project like a week ago, that was called Color Tones, I explained this and talk about a little bit about how to choose when to do those color tones, because unfortunately, depending on how that dominant seventh chord resolves, sometimes flat 9 works well. Basically, if it resolves down a fifth, if it's circle of fifths resolution, then flat 9, flat 13 usually sound good. In all other cases, it usually doesn't, so you're better off with the natural ninth and the natural 13th. But if it's going down a fifth, flat 9, flat 13 usually sound good. I will make one exception, though, and it's this chord right here, this dominant seventh 2 chord. Dominant seventh 2 chords, even when they resolve to 5, don't typically sound that great with flat 9s. So if I'm in the key of C, and I know you can't see my hands, but you can hear me, C, and then if I go to, this is dominant seventh 2 to 5 to 1. If I put a ninth on that 2, sounds beautiful. 13th there, sounds beautiful. And then the 1. But if I go, actually this sounds fine. Flat 9 on that chord. Yeah, actually that sounds fine in that context. There's some contexts, I would say, where flat 9 on that dominant 2 don't sound as nice as it does on most other chords. But in any case, that's a very subjective thing. All right, so there's a little music theory for you. And again, the color tone lesson that I did for the musicianship project last week goes into a little more detail. So let's see. I'm going to, the join stream button is way over to the right. That is definitely where it's supposed to be. So the join stream button, let me actually just, since there's a lot of question about this still, let me share my screen. This is what you should be seeing. If you are viewing this during the time of the stream or during that half hour before, once you've gotten to the cafe. So if you click MuseScore Café, watch live, and then you're going to want to click today's episode, right? Because it's showing all the upcoming episodes. You're going to want to click today's episode, which is the one at top, and then you'll click join this stream on the right. And when you click that, it will take you to the right place, but I'm not going to do it because I'm already in the stream and I don't even know what it's going to do to me. It's going to mess me up. So, vamps for Hawaiian songs are dominant 2 to 5 to 1. That's new information to me. I'm not as familiar. I'm not familiar with Hawaiian music much at all. So, but that is excellent to know. Now, I did think I saw another question. Nope, I guess maybe not another one before there. So let me keep scrolling and see where the next question was. It was Catherine about changing measure numbers. Okay, so that's a good question there also. So let's take a look at this score here. It starts with measure 0, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, it starts with measure 1. Sorry, if there's a pickup, it's 0. So there's measure 1, and then this is measure 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then measure 10, right? I'm using cursors to select, but you can't see it. So now you can see the individual measures. There's measure 10. Let's say that the piece you're working on is actually just an excerpt. It doesn't really start on measure 1. It starts on measure 7. So what I'm going to do is right-click this measure, go to Measure Properties, and here it says Add to Measure Number. Since it currently starts with 1, and I want it to start with measure 7, I need to add 6. So add 6, hit Apply, and now this is measure 7. Measure 8, 9, 10, etc. Well, you can even see the 7 right there. So when you right-click a measure, go to Measure Properties, that's where you'll find that Add to Measure Number. And that allows you to, and you can put negative numbers in there also so that you can start with, a negative number if you really want. And you can do that not only with the first measure of the piece, but other measures. So that's something you can do. Now, one thing, because it's a common mistake that people make, if you've got a piece for multiple movements, say like this is the end of the first movement of your piece right here, and you want the second movement to start with measure 1 again, don't mess with that add to measure number stuff. Instead, go to the end of your previous movement, and under the layout palette, instead of adding this line, this system break here, add this guy here, the section break. The section break automatically restarts the measure numbers. And it does some other convenient things like turns off courtesy key signatures and courtesy clefs and so forth. So yeah, that. So, is there a way to control chord voicing when using chord symbols is the question. Oh yeah, here's another thing for questions to make it easier for me to find. I have a piece of advice. Let me see if I can do this. I'm going to go to my window here where I can actually get at the chat to type. Try using the emoji. If you go to the emoji and then question, maybe add that red question mark. Maybe try that one and then say, I have a question. That's maybe something that'll make it easier for me to spot the questions, or maybe we'll discover a different emoji works better. Maybe adding that several times or putting a star. I don't know, but let's maybe think about using the emojis to help me out. That'll help. So Christopher's question about chord voicing, Richard's question about scaling. Excellent. So let's talk about chord voicing first. I'm going to go, let's see, I'm going to add a chord symbol here because there are some controls over chord voicing. I'm going to add G7 here. And now I'm going to right click it and say realize chord symbols. This is a command that will put the notes onto the staff so we can see what they actually are. And I'm just going to use the defaults and say OK. Well, what I can see that I'm getting here is a D, an F, a G, and a B. And this is for guitar, so this is actually like an octave lower. And then a low G, right? I'm going to get the root in the bass. And then I'm going to get the rest of the notes kind of all bunched together in the octave between middle C and the C above. And remember, this is sounding an octave lower. So this D is really the D right above middle C. So that is the default voicing. Just cram all the notes in just in that octave between middle C going up. So now I'm going to undo that, but this time I'm going to click this G7 and come over here to Properties, and where it says Voicing here, I'm going to change it from Auto to Drop 2. Now I'm going to do the same thing of right-clicking this chord symbol and say Realize Chord Symbols and hit OK. And now you'll see we have what's called a drop 2 voicing. The original voicing was DFGB, but the drop 2 voicing takes the second note from top, the G, and drops it down an octave. That's this G here. So a drop 2 voicing is a typical type of guitar voicing. So that one is how that would work. And there's other voicings you can select in here. You can ask it for a 4-note voicing where it'll, if you've got like a complex chord, it'll cut out some notes to leave you with only 4. If you have a triad, it'll double notes to give you 4, so you have a consistent voicing texture. But anyhow, those are the options that you have. You can make it play the root only. You can make it play that kind of close position voicing, which is kind of the default. Or you can do a drop 2 voicing, or you can do a 6-note voicing, a 4-note voicing, or a 3-note voicing. Other than that, if you don't like any of those, then what you do is use Realize Chord Symbols to put the notes on the staff, and then you edit them as you see fit to be what you want. And you could do that like on a hidden staff if you wanted. So anyhow, that's there's some limited control over the voicings. But given that there's not any control over the rhythms, realistically, if you're at the stage where you care about details like voicing, realistically, you're going to want to do that on a separate staff. So actually, let me show that. Let me show how to do a separate staff. Let's say that I want to have that chord play back on another staff. I'm going to come over to the Instruments panel. I'm going to, where it says Guitar here, I'm going to open Guitar up by clicking that little arrow or double-clicking Guitar, and then say Add Staff. And now I have another staff for the guitar. Of course, I already had two, but one was for tablature. So what I can do is put my specific voicing on here. Let's see, I wanted F, B, maybe this is the voicing I want. Let's add a G. Let's say this is the voicing I want. So what I could do is let's get rid of all the notes there on that staff. I'll put the G7 here. I will turn off playback for the G7, but have the notes that I want to hear there. And now I get to hear my cool jazz voicing, right? 7, 3, 13, or 6. And then, once you've got all that done, you come back to the instruments panel and you take that staff that you just added and you make it disappear by clicking that little eye. Now we're going to hear my cool voicing. And then you can also make it a cool rhythm or whatever else. So, Dave, I see your question about VST. The thing is, so I won't be able to demonstrate that here. First of all, on this machine, I don't have any VSTs installed. But I will say, VSTs are complicated. VSTs are difficult to work with. If you're used to them already, you're going to be loving that they're available. But if you're not used to them already, oh my God, why not just use MuseSounds? It's so much easier. But yeah, let's maybe do another session on VSTs. I did do a whole cafe session on VSTs like a few months ago, and I have the lesson in the course on VST. If you have a particular problem with spiccato, maybe post your score, maybe Jim or someone else will be able to help with that because he's familiar with that particular VST BBC. Let's talk about Richard's question here about getting something to reduce to fit on a smaller page size, because this is an interesting question. They're all interesting questions. But yeah, it comes up. If you've created a score, you might want to put it on smaller paper. What I would say is I personally would probably do that, Richard, by using my PDF printing program. In other words, I would just do my score as 8.5 by 11, and then when I go to print in the printer driver, like when you go to print this thing, Control P, there's properties here, and then you go to the properties, and depending on your printer driver, there might be a scaling option in here. It's going to depend on your printer. Right now, this is just a PDF printer. And now I'm looking at all these settings here, and I don't see in this particular one that there's any sort of setting for scaling. But some printers have that built in. Or export it to PDF. And many programs that can print PDFs have scaling built in. So I might potentially do it that way. But if you know you're only going to want to print it 7 by 10, well then, let's make that happen. What we're going to do is go to Format, Page Settings, and now I'll pick. So what did you say? 7 by 10.5. 7, 10.5. That is my new size, and there's my size. Now that size there, 7 by 10.5, I don't know it. Is that actually a standard file? That's not Octavo format, is it? It's just a custom size as far as MuseScore is concerned. So when it did that, let me switch over to millimeters here. It's still using the default size for the staff. So normally, if you print on that smaller paper, you're probably also going to want a slightly smaller staff size. For choral music, you did say choral music, right? Yeah, choral page. Choral music is typically at a smaller size because you're hand holding it close to your eyes. The standard print size is for, like music sitting on a piano, that's like arm's length away. But choral music you're holding in your hand, which is why you use smaller paper, and it's typically a slightly smaller staff size also so that it minimizes page turns and you can fit lyrics in there. So you might go with something as small as 1.5 for your staff space. That'll give you a 6, there's 4 staff spaces in a staff, right? 5 lines, 4 spaces. So 1.5 millimeters for your staff space works out to 6 millimeters for the staff. And I'm told that is pretty common for choral music. So I would recommend that. Set up your page size to be the way you want it. Set up the staff space size the way you want it. And then and then your score is just that way, and now you can print it directly that way. So so yeah, there you go. So good. Yeah, this question mark actually works pretty well. I'm spotting these pretty quickly. So we've got some more chord symbol stuff. So yeah, let's keep talking about chord symbols here. So John is asking about selecting real life chords. Oh, no, no, no. So like if you mean by real life, like knowing every instrument that's ever been designed and knowing how a G7 is played on guitar versus banjo versus lute versus piano versus accordion, no, that MuseScore isn't that smart. It doesn't have like preset. And of course there's a lot of shapes. Like, you might think G7 should be those shapes, but no jazz player would ever play whatever it is that you're describing here, right? A jazz player would always be voicing these things differently depending on context. There is a well-known set, of course, of like, beginning chord symbols that you learn when you first learn guitar. I know G, D7, right? I learned those shapes. MuseScore doesn't know those shapes. It would be possible probably for someone to write a plugin that would generate chords based on kind of a preset palette like that. Also, I could totally imagine, since MuseScore does have a guitar palette, if I go to View, Master Palette, Fretboard Diagrams, it's got all these preset chords here. And if I remembered which one is G7, maybe this one's G7 right there. I've added a G7. Oh, except I didn't add it to my score. Dang, I didn't have anything selected. Try that again. View, Master Palette, Fretboard Diagrams. This time I'll watch, make sure it adds. There's my G7. It would be nice if the system were able to interpret your fretboard diagram. And then even if you customize your fretboard diagram, that would be a lovely feature. And probably someday when people have enough time, or if someone volunteers to implement it, no doubt that would eventually happen. But right now there's nothing like that currently. So the next question is getting superscripting in chord symbols. So the simplest answer to that is that, first of all, music is usually typeset in one of two ways. It's either this traditional way or it uses jazz fonts. So in traditional typesetting, superscripting is almost unheard of. If you check out any book that uses like plain Roman fonts like this for chord symbols, they almost never superscript. So MuseScore doesn't do that by default. However, if you look at jazz charts, they usually do. So if I create, actually I'm not even going to create a whole new score. Well, I don't need to create a new score, but I'm going to. I'm going to use the jazz template and say jazz lead sheet. If you do this, notice now we have handwritten fonts everywhere for the text as well as for the notation, and that's also going to apply to the chord symbols, G7, flat 9, and it automatically does appropriate levels of superscripting. Now, if you want to get that same, and so this happens by default when using a jazz template. If you haven't used a jazz template, but you just want to change your chord symbols to that jazz style, you can go to Format, Style, and by the way, here, musical symbols font, if you change that to Muse Jazz, that's going to make the music be that font. And then, under chord symbols, you can change that to the jazz style. And now you'll see the music is in the handwritten font, and so are the chord symbols, and the chord symbols have the superscripting done automatically. Now, I'm going to undo that change. Let's say I don't want the jazz font, but I do want superscripting. There's some limited support for that. Again, it's not a common thing in published music to do this, but if you go to Format, Style, Chord Symbols, let's take a look at these options over here. I'm going to move this guy out of the way a little bit so I can see better. Here's my G7 flat 9. These settings here, extension, scaling, extension, vertical offset. The 7 here is the extension. So if I scale it down a little bit to 0.9, you'll see it's a little smaller, and put a negative offset to raise it up, and now it's raised up a little bit. Modifier scaling, if I make that modifier smaller still, and then raise it even more, I get something that's still not really small enough for my taste. There we go. that looks something like what the Jazz one looked like by default. And that, since I did that as a style setting, that works even for, other chord symbols. It's going to apply that same formatting. So those settings, it's not a ton of control, and you'll find certain chords like you wish that certain, like, oh, I want this subscripted but not this, or this superscripted but not that. You're not going to get fine control like that because it wasn't really designed for that. Again, the Jazz style does that built in to kind of adhere to the standard that exists that most Jazz publishers use. Most publishers who don't use Jazz fonts don't superscript at all, so there wasn't like a standard we could use for that. So we just provided a couple different controls to get you started. There has been work done to eventually provide more controls here. Now, Dave had mentioned about fretboard diagrams for guitar, and yeah, the default in MuseScore, there is that fretboard diagram palette for guitar. There are people who have made custom palettes for other instruments. There's a ukulele palette, for instance. And I don't know if it's ever been updated for MuseScore 4 or if it's going to work to load it, but I'm about to find out. I'm going to go. How am I going to? I think to load a palette, you don't do it from the More Palettes button. You do it from the ... which is kind of weird. But if I say Load Palette, and then I go to where I have that thing stored, ukulele chords, ukulele. I'm going to guess it's this guy here. I see two different things called ukulele, but this one's more recent and bigger, so I'm going to go with it. And there's ukulele fretboard diagrams. Open it up, and hey, I got some ukulele fretboard diagrams. So there you go. I downloaded that from the forum, back in 2020, apparently. So if you do a search, you might be able to find someone, you might be able to find that particular palette, and maybe someone else has updated it further. But yeah, eventually we'd love to have a repository for people to share stuff like this, because you post something in the forum, it could easily get lost. We don't have like a place to upload and download things, but that would be a lovely thing, wouldn't it? Okay, so I'm going to show you, since I'm talking about this customization thing, I want to show you something that I'm kind of getting moderately excited about, and that is the idea of using simple plugins to solve simple tasks. So there's a number of things that MuseScore maybe doesn't do automatically, or there used to be a way to do, and then that got dropped going from MuseScore 2 to MuseScore 3, or from 3 to 4. Some of these things are like really simple things to add back and just have never happened. And so I've been working on coming up with some to see what little features could exist that would be easy to do by a plugin. And I want to show you one I just wrote this morning. It's not done, but it works. So I'm going to show you the plugin and then show you how to load them also. So to load plugins, well, first of all, you'll have to download it. You'll have to find the thing on the MuseScore website and download it. But the one that I just created this morning is called Align. Hello. Oh. Is it not on this? It's not on this system? I thought. Maybe maybe I won't be able to show it to you. But anyhow, it's a cool little plugin that I just wrote this morning. I'm a little curious why it's not showing up here. Let me just give me one moment to check on some things here. I'll tell you what it does, and then I'll show it off. If I can't show it today, I'll show it some other time. But I'm not sure why that didn't show up, so I do want to do a quick check. Plugins, align.qml. There it is. So maybe I have to restart this thing. So I'm actually going to kill MuseScore and restart it. That demo MuseScore script is the thing that gives me the thing where you can see my keystrokes. I want to show you what this Align plugin does, because it's just a clever little thing that came up based on a forum discussion. Not a forum discussion. It was actually someone who submitted a feature request, and I was like, yeah, there's not a feature like that currently, but shoot, there certainly could be. So manage plugins. Does it show up now? No. For some reason, my Align plugin isn't showing up now, and that's bumming me out, and I don't know why. But what it does, once I have it installed on this machine, because it was a different machine I was working on, is it just lets you easily align elements. So if you have, for instance, say you have a dynamic marking on this note and a dynamic marking on that note, on this G over here, and they're not aligned because of the automatic placement is, pushing this mezzo forte further down, it would allow you to select both of them, hit a button, and then they would become aligned. It would move the P down to align with the mezzo forte. Simple little plugin, and it basically works as I have it, but I've got some fine tuning to do. What happens if you've got like it only works on 5-line staves, basically. It won't work on a tablature staff right now. It won't work correctly, I should say, or a drum staff. So I'm going to see if I can get that working. But in any case, it's a simple little plugin, and there's a number of other things like that that are, I'm constantly saying, hey, I bet there would be a simple plugin for this, and someday I'm going to create some or get someone else to. But, that's something I've been thinking about lately. So, Bob, you're asking, is there a tutorial on writing plugins? The thing is, no. There's definitely help. If you go to the plugins forum on MuseScore.org, there's people who can answer questions. What I will say, the best way to learn plugins is just to load them, just to look at them. So if you go to the MuseScore website, let's take a look at where these things are on the website. If I go to MuseScore website.org, and then click download plugins, you're going to see all of these plugins here. And let's take a look at one of these. Duration Editor is a really sophisticated, interesting one. If I go to where the code repository is here, it's hosted on GitHub. Here's durationeditor.qml. You can look at the code to someone else's plugin and kind of learn. So they're written in QML, which is basically JavaScript with some user interface stuff wrapped around it, is quick and dirty description of what QML is. So if you know JavaScript, you're well suited to writing plugins. And so this is all stuff, these image button declarations. This all is about what the actual user interface, because some plugins can have dialog boxes or other windows that you can interact with, and some just do something. So in any case, so you can read the code to other people's. You can also do a search for MuseScore plugin API. I don't actually know how to get to this other than by doing a web search for it. But this is some pretty extensive documentation on all the functions and members and classes, etc., that exist. It's documentation on them one by one, but it's not a tutorial. It doesn't tell you how to get started. So I recommend you start by looking at an existing plugin, and then when you need to look things up, the API here does a good job. So, so Michael, is it on the far right? Okay, not sure what you're asking about there. Oh, is it on the far right? And that was, oh gosh, Michael, you might be absolutely right. I think you might. Oh, geez, Michael, thank you so much. There's my Align plugin. All right, I got my Align plugin. Oh, and I can also give it a shortcut. Edit shortcut. I'm going to say define it to be L. Thank you, Michael. Lifesaver. All right. So here's my score. And maybe I'll have another one here where it's a C up here. And so it's even a different alignment. So these guys are all not aligned, right? I'm going to select all three of them. And you can, I'm going to select them the cool way. I click the P, shift click the PPP. You ready for some magic? I'm about to press L. Ha 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 ha! Look at that. Wasn't that cool? So, yeah, that's a nice little plugin. As mentioned, right now it only works with a standard 5-line staff. I'm going to see if I can get it to be staff size aware. The reason that is true is that the position of the dynamics is actually measured from the top staff line. So the height of the staff actually matters in performing the various calculations that are involved here. But it's a silly, simple little plugin. There's really only a few lines of code. Once I have it working a little better, I'll go ahead and post it to the MuseScore website to make it available for download. But yeah, there's a set of interesting little simple little tasks like this that plugins are well suited for. That yeah, I'm going to try to make some things happen like that. So yeah, there's a number of things like that. Here's another one. There's as another example. Let me go back to plugins, manage plugins, and this time the one that says, and here again I'm going to have to decide if I can see it or not. What was the thing called? Fix to line. It must be hidden right over here. Fix to line. I'm going to enable that. Now, when I go to my score, I can select a bunch of notes and go to plugins, fix to line, and I have a little dialog box here, and I can select, say, line 5, hit OK, and now those notes are all fixed to line 5. They still sound like their original notes, but they're all fixed to a particular line. There's, this is used internally by slash notation, and there used to be a visible setting in MuseScore 3 where you could play with it. That setting got removed, but it's still there internally, so I just wrote a plugin to allow you to set that property internally in case someone ever needs it. It's also, got some issues that I'm still working on to get that thing working a little better. So, okay, yeah, the fix that's Michael. You're absolutely right. So you notice this. This note here, notes that have the wrong that have longer stems than default because they have ledger lines. Like this G below the staff has a longer than default stem length because notes on ledger lines are supposed to reach the middle line. That's the rule of notation here. So this stem length is actually too long, and the fix to line doesn't get that right. And that's not a problem with my plugin. That's a problem with just internally how this stuff is done, because it wasn't really meant for you to do arbitrary things like that. So it doesn't do a great job of it. It's just good enough to get slash notation working. But yeah, you can hopefully click that stem and fix it. There you go. Or, do it using the properties panel to make it a little stem length. How about -1? That's probably more correct. Yeah. Oh, crashed again. Yeah. So unfortunately, yeah, I don't know if it's because I'm using this test version here. I'm gonna have to try to see if I can reproduce any of these crashes, because that was like 3 crashes in one session, and that's not great. So Marla asking about will it work in a grand staff? I will assume you're talking about that the alignment thing. And yes, here's the little test file that I was using for it. I was doing this. Come on. There we go, align right here. Here's my test score for the alignment function. And as soon as it gets here, we'll get to show it. This is like unusually slow at the moment. But okay, so here I can select these, align those above the staff, select these, align them between the staves, select these, align them below the staff, etc. Lyrics automatically align, right? Lyrics automatically align, chord symbols automatically align. Now lyrics always align automatically. Chord symbols, to get chord symbols to align, let me delete these guys temporarily. If I enter a chord symbol here, they're not aligned by default. But if I go to Format, Style, Chord Symbols, we're going to see this thing that says Maximum Shift Above. The idea here is they will align, MuseScore will align them up to a certain limit. At some point it's going to say, no, one chord symbol way up in the stratosphere because of one note with a lot of ledger lines. I'm not going to move everything up that high. MuseScore is going to have a limit of how far it's going to be willing to move things. The default is 0, meaning it won't move them at all. I find a value around 4 works pretty well here. So it doesn't mean it's moving it by 4. It means it'll move it at most by 4. So as I move these notes down, you'll see they're aligned. As I move that one note up, they keep aligning. But at some point, MuseScore says, no, now it's just silly. I'm not going to align all these other notes just to match that one chord symbol that was far away. So anyhow, that happens automatically. And lyrics align automatically. If I type lyrics, 1, 2, 3, 4, as soon as I take this E and drop it down an octave and start pushing it down, you'll see all the other lyrics align automatically. So lyrics always align automatically. Chord symbols optionally align automatically. This align plugin will just quickly set the offsets of these things. So if you actually click on this A and go to Properties, Appearance, you'll see here it is set the offset, the original. If I select that A and Control R and get it back below the staff, we'll see the default offset was 2.5, but the act of selecting some things and aligning them changes that offset to 5.55. So yeah, it just sets the offset for you. So the thing is, without the plugin, it's still not particularly hard to align things. So let me show you how to do that without the plugin. They're above the staff, click X below. So see how these things are not aligned? Watch this magic. All I'm going to do is click in here, and I'm just going to increase the spin box. And watch what's happening. The notes that are close, the ones that are closest to the staff are starting to move, but the ones that are further away are not. And I'm going to keep doing this until they all catch up to the E. And now they all move together, and then I can move them back or move them, wherever. So even without the plugin, just by selecting them all and using the offset, you can get them to align. It only takes a few seconds anyhow. But, if you can shave a few seconds off by using a plugin, why not, right? So that's basically why I decided, let's see if that little plugin will help. All right. So did I miss any other question marks? And I don't think so. So yeah, Dave, unfortunately, I really can't answer questions about those particular VSTs because I don't know them and I don't have VSTs installed. Will the alignment work with the fingering numbers? And no, they won't. Well, no, because fingers work. That's one of the things I might see if I can find a way around. Fingerings aren't positioned relative to the staff. They're relative to the note. And this is correct. Fingerings aren't supposed to be aligned normally. Published music almost never aligns fingering, at least for piano or guitar. I mean, maybe harp is different. I don't know. But fingerings are normally not aligned. They're put as close to the note as possible. So the offsets work relative to the note. So if I wanted to force the fingerings to be aligned, I'd have to somehow calculate the position of the note and factor that in there. So, I might see if I can figure that out. And so, Michael, you're asking about 402 being released. There isn't a specific schedule, but what I can tell you is 2 days ago, was it 2 days ago? I think so. It was Monday. They posted a test build of 4.02 that said, all right, this is what we think is going to be the release. And when I say posted, to the Discord server, the development chat. There's a development chat server on Discord. And so they posted to there. So anyone who was on the Discord server saw the 4.02 test builds and has been testing them the last couple days. This morning, they posted an updated test build because they fixed like 2 more bugs or 4 more bugs, something like that. But assuming that no new crash, because they fixed all the crashes and problems that they wanted to fix. But if I'm able to show them that, hey, this thing crashed here and it didn't crash before, they'll maybe do another 4.02 test build. But I guess what I'm saying here is they've got a test build from 2 days ago, an updated one today. If all goes well, maybe by the end of the week. Maybe by the end of the week, you might expect the 402. That's just a guess. It's going to kind of depend on, how much testing they think they're able to get done and whether new bugs get reported that feel like they really need to be. Because it's not like they fixed every bug. They've identified the bugs that are critical enough to want to be fixed in this particular update. Other bugs will wait for, the next update. So the thing is, I don't know that anyone understands why some small percentage of Macs have an audio problem. Like most people on Mac have no problem at all, but a small handful of people, and almost all of them on Mac, have some sort of weird delay going on. And I don't know that anyone understands why, because I don't know that anyone on the development team has been able to reproduce that. But maybe I'm wrong. I do know that there were some fixes on Windows audio. And maybe they magically fix whatever was going on those few Mac systems also. I don't know. But unfortunately, I don't think anyone's been able to reproduce that, so I don't know that there's any fixes planned. You can certainly go to the MuseScore.org. We're going to wrap things up shortly, but if I go back to MuseScore.org here and show you, it's going to be easier just to go there. On MuseScore.org, download software, scroll down to where it says development builds, and then nightly build download page. You can download a nightly build to test yourself and see if you notice any difference on your system in how that works. Dave's asking about more MuseSound instruments. Yeah, there's a whole guitar pack that's been announced to be coming sometime soon, and a percussion pack that's been announced to be coming soon. It's also widely kind of assumed that a jazz instruments pack will come, and probably others too. But we know for sure guitar is coming. We know for sure percussion, like marching percussion, is coming, and we're pretty sure jazz horns are coming in general. If you've got a specific issue with a specific note and a specific articulation, by all means submit an issue, open an issue. They are fixing issues left and right as they get reported, but issues that don't get reported will never be fixed, right? So if you've got a specific score, specific note, specific articulation that has a problem, open an issue, they'll fix it. So I'm not aware of any particular outstanding issues that have been submitted against Flute, which is why there haven't been any updates for that. I mean, there's been other updates for Flute fixing intonation issues that were reported, but I'm not aware of any issues that have been reported about any particular Flute articulations. All right, so let's come back, regroup, and get some music to finish out with here. And we'll get wrap things up. So I'll start talking here. I want to thank everyone for being here. Here's my music. Give me a moment for it to finish loading. All right, thanks everyone again for being here. Thanks for the questions. Great session. Got to cover just lots of different topics here. And yeah, 4.02. Maybe by the end of the week, maybe next week. I guess we'll see. And tomorrow we'll do my regular music masterclass. I got some more stuff to talk about with chord voicing. And next week, I do want to start talking about the basic music theory course and the idea that, there's some things I want to have people go through this course. So anyone who's like really shaky on basic things like major scales and so forth, we're going to have you covered. I also got some other things I'm going to be announcing next week, hopefully. So lots of exciting things coming up that I look forward to sharing with all of you soon. So thanks again, everyone, and see you next time.